Good morning, boys and girls. It's Thursday, August 13th, 2025. Let's see, the time is 7:44 a.m. and it's kind of pleasant weather here in the Salt Lake Valley. Let me check out what KSL has to say. 43 degrees now. Nope, that's over on the other side of the valley. 51 degrees at this end of the valley. 51 degrees, 68 degrees later in the day, zero rain. Tomorrow we get some clouds, and on Sunday we get some rain. There you go. Oh, yeah, we're going to have fun time today. Um, I have it in mind to talk about bird hands. And then after that subject is exhausted, then I have it in mind to talk about the executive summary of the story of the universe as we can see it from Philippians 2, verses 5 to 11. And I will put the link in now so you can come in and hang out with me. Because first thing we'll do is watch the bird hands video. Do you know what the bird hands are? Right. This is finger pointing. That's the bird hands. It's very close. Very close. Because body language is a thing people talk with their whole body. They don't even know it. You can, if you pick up and study body language, you can see all kinds of interesting things. Like if somebody scratches their nose like this, see, and they're showing you the back of their hand, it's kind of a rejection thing. If somebody shows you the front of their hand, like doing this with their hair, it's kind of an acceptance thing, right? If somebody is keeping both feet flat on the floor, generally speaking, that's an indication that they're telling the truth. But if they're not telling the truth, somehow, some way, at least one foot will tilt up, So I don't know why that would be an indication of lying, but just see if you can pay attention to body language and you'll pick up some things. Good morning, Spoy and Pope and Halcyon and Tommy. And let's get started and find. Oh yeah. Oh, so I know how to get started. We'll start out with a little gardening and coffee sipping. You know what I mean? Here we go.
Pretty important when making char in a closed system like a retort that the feedstock that you're using is roughly of the same diameter and it's completely dry. The same does not apply when making char in an open system like a pit or a trench. Today I'm going to be doing a bit more property cleanup utilizing the trench method with feedstock that's of various sizes and various ages. Some of it was cut as recently as yesterday. I can either take that pile back there and I can burn it, which would be much easier, quite honestly. Or I can put in a little bit more work, reduce it down to an appropriate size, and burn it within this trench and make biochar. Now this carbon has been sequestered. And it will be able to go back into the soil potentially indefinitely. I don't need a retort or a trench to make biochar. So why should I use one? Well, they make the process of pyrolysis much easier to control. by providing you a containment vessel for you to exclude oxygen. So in order to exclude oxygen, we need to continually add more material to the top, providing that lid. Get it down to an appropriate size. I first need to establish a good bed of coals at the bottom. And I can either do that by starting out and building my fire incrementally as I go, or as I've done in this case, kind of create a one and done type of a scenario where I'm going to hit this with a little bit of flame and it's going to take off. I've established a lot of light flashy fuel down at the bottom, incrementally increasing in size. To set the time lapse up, hit this with a little fire. We're going to make some char. I'm going to show two separate trench burns, both using feedstock that is dissimilar in size and mostly uncured and green. Both of these time lapses represent about 2 hours worth of burn time. And the first of these burns is lit using the one and done method I described. As you may notice, there's a good deal of smoke being generated, and smoke is really just an indicator of incomplete combustion. And smoke will be present until most of the moisture is driven out and the gases begin to burn. What I'm attempting to do is to provide that lid or cap over the top of the trench, thereby restricting the oxygen available to the burning material. Every time the fire begins to burn cleanly with less smoke and the feedstock begins to turn to ash, I add more material. This next trench was started by establishing a small bed of coals and incrementally adding the feedstock. This material was also green and uncured, although somewhat drier than the previous batch, which may explain why it's burning a little bit cleaner and less smoky. Bear in mind, if I had been using dry wood for this process, it would have taken me about a quarter of the time. But I wanted to demonstrate that you can make char with material that was cut same day if you get your fire hot enough and you exclude enough oxygen. I'll usually extinguish the pit right about the time I have about 50% of it has turned to ash. Stuff that hasn't burned that's on top, I will just fish it out, and then in subsequent burns, I will put it back into the pile and it'll be made into char. While cooling the char in the pit, while it's still very hot, there's a lot of steam that's generated, and that steam has the effect of breaking open the pore spaces, increasing the porosity of the biochar. Also too, there's less of the volatile organic compounds that will have an opportunity to solidify on the biochar during the cooling process, making it less hydrophobic right out of the gate. Despite starting with material that was of all different sizes as well as different moisture contents, I wound up with a pretty decent batch of char. And I am going to retrieve this out of this pit and get it over into the chicken yard and let the kids play with it. Each of our 3 coops is going to get a healthy dose of this char, and that's going to help in their bedding areas with odor absorption. And then once this gets moved out into the chicken yard, it will already have a head start on inoculation. If you're interested in learning more about biochar, this video will show you everything you need to know in 7 minutes. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.
Thank you so much. Anybody want to see the 7-minute video with me? Type in 7 in the side chat if you are game to watch the biochar explained in 7 minutes. And while you're thinking about whether or not to put 7 in there, I'm going to go refresh my coffee. I'll be right back. And holy smoke, I'm so excited. Oh, the title of today's show is Do the Super Christians Use Bird Hands to Lecture and Browbeat? And maybe we can even ask if they're using bird hands Why don't you just go ahead and do the finger pointing? The bird hands, like they're trying to hide the finger pointing. How dare you? I would never commit that sin. I'm moral. I have morals and ethics coming out my butt. The deceiver deceives all the nations. Yes, that's what God wants the deceiver to deceive the nations. And we know this because, according to the prophetic, insightful story of the book of Revelation, Satan is locked up for 1,000 years. And after the 1,000 years, God lets him out. What the hell? It only makes sense to understand that God is using Satan seven if it makes you happy. I'll be right back. Hang on a second. Let me let me make sure you guys stay warm here while I'm getting my so-called coffee recharge going. All right. Oh yeah, let's do 7 minutes worth of understanding of biochar. And then we'll get to the all important topic of bird hands. You know what I mean? The all important topic of modern day explanation of the
Have you ever wanted to know what
modern day
biochar is?
explanation of the tyranny of the shoulds. You should do this and you should not do that. The tyranny of the shoulds. Some guys who practice preaching absolute morals and ethics. Yeah, that's the tyranny of the shoulds. Okay, here's our 7 minute episode.
Have you ever wanted to know what biochar is and then you've attempted to look it up or had somebody try to explain it to you in very scientific terms and your eyes just gloss over? I'm going to explain to you in layman's terms what it is, how it's made, and the things that it can be used for. Stick around. So what is biochar? It's just charcoal. It's charcoal that's been created from biomass through the process of pyrolysis. Biomass is nothing more than living or recently living organic material. In the case of making biochar, quite commonly what is used is wood, but many different substances that were once living could easily be made into char. There's a number of different thermochemical conversion processes used in making biochar. However, the vast majority utilizing wood as a biomass is made with the process of pyrolysis. So what's happening when we make biochar? This material undergoes a form of thermal decomposition. It's decomposing due to the heat that's being applied, and that process is called pyrolysis. I'm going to explain now the difference between pyrolysis and combustion and what makes this different from what you get out of your wood stove or your fireplace. Organic material undergoing the process of pyrolysis, and you will be left with this. Organic material undergoing the process of combustion, and you'll be left with this. What's the difference? The difference between these two is that this has undergone that thermal decomposition in the absence of oxygen. So in order for a fire to occur, you need three things. It's called the fire triangle. You've got heat, you've got fuel, and then you've got oxygen. If you remove any one of those three things of the triangle, a fire cannot occur. This needs that third element, and it doesn't have that. It's got the heat, the fuel exists, but there's no oxygen. So this can no longer burn, and what you're left with is you're left with a very, very pure form of carbon. Now, there are going to be some residual oil and some residual tars and things like that, but essentially this is very, very pure. So what's happened in this instance is that this has been heated to its ignition temperature. When it reaches that ignition temperature, it starts to off gas, and it starts to drive off all of the volatile gases that are flammable. I've experimented with and had some limited success with some of the different processes that are out there where you build a pile, burn it from the top down, and before it turns to ash, you want to go ahead and quench it and then extract your charcoal from there. I've experimented with the cone pit, I've experimented with the trench method. However, the system that I've currently had a lot of success with and I've settled on is the biochar retort. If learning more about that system interests you, I'll put a link in the description directing you to some of the videos I've made on how that system was designed and how it operates. The thing I like about the system that I'm currently using is it's very hands-off. I can essentially light the system, come back the next day, and I've got high quality char. And I've had very limited interaction with it from the point at which I light it to the point where I go ahead and collect it. I do not have any experience using a kiln, but I thought I would mention it in the context of this video as another option of a closed system that is used quite commonly for pyrolyzing wood for biochar. I think it's important to note that biochar got its start more than 2,500 years ago in the Amazon basin. The indigenous people in that area at the time had discovered this dark, rich, fertile soil that had nutrient and water retentive qualities highly sought after for growing plant matter. It's called terra preta, or black earth in Portuguese. And aside from its moisture retentive and soil building qualities, it has a lot of other specific uses, and I'd like to go ahead and highlight those now. One of the very unique things about biochar is just it has an incredible amount of porosity. The surface area of 1 gram of well-made biochar is said to be equivalent to half of an acre or 2,000 square meters. One of the beneficial uses of this is to remediate both soil and water. Biochar is negatively charged, so it's going to attract positively charged chemicals and or nutrients. And it's going to draw those elements into the char and it'll be retained. The thing that's pretty cool about biochar is just that it's environmentally friendly. This piece of char could potentially be around for thousands of more years. It's a really effective way to take a waste stream, something that would ordinarily either go into a landfill or just naturally decompose into the atmosphere, and sequester it in a way that it does something beneficial by putting back into the earth. Before inoculation, char in this form needs to be crushed. And ideally, it needs to be crushed down to 1/4 inch in diameter or smaller. Crushing is another important step, but it takes time. And I generally do it in kind of more of a passive way, where I will either crush it in the wheelbarrow or I will put this in a feed sack and then walk on top of the feed sack. I created a video detailing that process. I'll put a link as well into the description. One thing that's very important that you do before you add this to your soil as an amendment is that you preload it or you inoculate it. It's very important that you do that because, again, this is a blank slate. This is very, very absorbent with all that porous space. And what it's going to do is it's going to have a negative effect if you take something like this and put this directly into the soil. It's going to actually draw nutrients away from the plants who are competing for those nutrients. Here's a list of some of the items that may be used to inoculate your char. It's not as important on which of these items that you choose, but it's important that you choose one of them. Essentially what you're doing is you're filling up that pore space with something so that that pore space isn't going to be thirsty for the nutrient and competing against the plants that you're trying to grow. A natural byproduct of this process is when this cools, tar and resin will solidify on its surface, essentially making it hydrophobic, meaning that it will not absorb water. So it's very important to try to get that hydrophobic property lessened or completely eliminated by introducing it to water. I typically don't worry too much about that issue because it's going to remain in this compost yard. This char that I've crushed is going to wind up being in the chicken yard, and it's going to have plenty of time for all of those resins and oils and tars to break down, and then the inoculation process is going to take place. It's going to be in that compost absorbing nutrient from the compost that's been generated in that yard for at least 2 months. The two primary ways that I inoculate my char is I'll put it directly into the compost piles, or I'll utilize it as livestock bedding within my chicken coops. Utilizing the char in the bedding areas of my chicken coop has a couple of different benefits. It's going to absorb the nutrient from their manure, but it's also going to absorb and reduce the amount of odor that comes from that manure. They seem to like it quite a bit. If you're interested in learning more about biochar, click now to enter my video playlist.
Okay, I just got word that I've got a guest coming over to visit, and I'm going to hang out with him. And so I'm going to close up shop early, and when I get back, we'll do the bird hands thing for realsies. Oh, just so if you want to get a head start on the bird hands thing, let me see if I can find it for you. Oh, here we go. Yeah, so here's the link for the bird hands thing. It was done by Homath. Go over and watch it, and then when I get back, we'll watch it together, and maybe at that time you can come in, and we can rejoice together in the grace of God, because the point of replaying the bird hands episode from Homath is to show you that, to put a great emphasis on God's operations of grace, but no offers of grace. God's operations of grace, but no offers of grace. You see, here's the bird hens. Yeah, how dare you? If you were really a super Christian, you'd behave like a super Christian and you wouldn't encourage people to sin. How dare you? Yeah, that grace thing, that's awful. My God, what the hell are you talking about? Because where grace abounds, don't you know, sin much more abounds. Romans 5:20 was not written right. It says where sin abounds, grace is much more. Yeah, I'll admit that, but it really should say that where grace abounds, oh, you're just encouraging sin, don't you know? You just want people to go out and rob banks, don't you know? Oh, yeah. Yeah. See you later, alligator.